Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets and flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brian Schmuck, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Couch Coach Nation, we've wrapped up week 9 and are moving to November football next weekend. This was the first weekend where I felt like it was kind of a ho-hum weekend. I wasn't real thrilled with all of the games that I watched. We did have 2 ranked teams pushed to overtime where they did come away with a win. South Carolina gave Alabama all they could handle. The FCS number 1 versus number 2 matchup was a blowout. The best game of the day to me was the group of 5 game between South Florida and Memphis. After next weekend, we'll get our first CFP rankings, signaling we're in the home stretch of the season. We're in November, weather's getting colder, and we're looking towards the playoffs and bowl games. AV, what were your thoughts on the weekend?
Yeah, I think the same as you. It was a good weekend for the SEC. Noon, 3:30 window, 7:30 window, all had ranked teams playing. I do agree that the Memphis USF game was probably the game of the weekend, that or the Mississippi State-Texas game. But college football is always good. I can't sit here and say it was the greatest weekend of college football. But I will say that we're starting to get in. You felt it a little bit this weekend. You mentioned the cold weather and all that. We're starting to get into the point of the season where pressure starts to matter, scenarios start to play out. So it'll start getting more interesting moving forward. But this weekend was solid. I give it a solid.
I mentioned the blowout in the FCS. Number 1, North Dakota State dominated number 2, South Dakota State. North Dakota State was up 31-7 at the half. South Dakota State was held to 4 first half first downs. The Bison outgained them 345-56 in the first half with no yards on the ground for South Dakota State. The game was over at that point. North Dakota State added another touchdown late to make it 38-7. This was a blowout.
North Dakota State is a machine. They have a winning streak going. They've been number 1 for a while. We both predicted them to win. I both predicted them to win fairly easily. So not surprising to me, but also a little anticlimactic. You were hoping that would be kind of one of the games of the week as well.
The best game of the weekend, I felt, was Memphis 34, USF 31. Upset of the ranked USF Bulls. USF had a 10-point lead at the half and 130 more yards on the ground, and it looked like they were on their way to dominating win over Memphis. They extended that lead to 14 by the end of the third quarter. And then Memphis responded in the fourth quarter with 17 unanswered points. They get the win. Quarterback Brendan Lewis and running back Greg DeRozers, they made the plays in the fourth quarter. I was really kind of surprised how this went. It seemed like USF just stopped. To Memphis's credit, they poured it on in the fourth quarter. They made all the plays when they needed to. It kind of makes it a little bit difficult arguing for that group of 5 team getting in the playoff when you don't have a USF that just keeps churning out wins. Now, maybe that'll be Navy, who's still undefeated. They do have a couple tough games left, starting with North Texas next week. They've got Notre Dame in a non-conference game, so they still have a lot of tough football in front of them. But you were kind of looking maybe for USF to have a dominating win over Memphis and say, all right, we're here. We can play with anyone. Now the Americans wide open. Navy and Tulane are still undefeated in conference, so we'll see what happens. The Americans going to be exciting down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that's a big wasted opportunity for USF, man. They had themselves in position, to put themselves in a really strong position. Like you said, keep churning out wins. They're ranked, and they put themselves in position during that game to do it. And then the fourth quarter just didn't close it out. So great on Memphis. They bounced back from a tough loss the week before. Opens the door for Navy and teams like that, like you said, to maybe win the conference.
For me, what was the best of the big games of the weekend? I really enjoyed watching Ole Miss, Oklahoma. This was 34-26 Ole Miss. The game was tied at 10 in the second quarter when Ole Miss got a safety, field goal, touchdown for 12 unanswered points before the half, and it seemed like they might put Oklahoma away. They held Oklahoma to 16 first half rushing yards. The third quarter, they swapped field goals before a huge 65-yard touchdown run for Oklahoma, followed by a 3-and-out and then another Oklahoma touchdown. touchdown drive to take the lead, and it looked like Ole Miss might have the same fate that they did last week against Georgia, where they were up and let it slip away. Ole Miss, they answered the bell. The very next drive, they took the ball down, got a touchdown, added a field goal late to ice it. The OU defense, which had been sacking everybody all year long, managed one sack on Trinidad Chambliss, who passed for 315 yards, added another 53 on the ground. What you think of this game, AV?
Yeah, throw Trinidad Chambliss's name in the Heisman race now. I think we do that every week to whoever's playing well, but he's put together a stretch of really good games and proved to be one of the best QBs, at least in the SEC, if not the country. Even last week in their loss against Georgia, he played well. 400 yards of offense against an Oklahoma defense that a lot of people thought were the best in the country, especially the front seven, like you said, getting sacks on everyone. To go out there and put up enough points to win the game, take care of the ball for the most part. I was really impressed with him, really impressed with the Ole Miss defense, because they're the kind of the thing that's holding Ole Miss back from being a really elite team. And I do think Ole Miss is on the precipice of being elite. They could win it all this year, and it wouldn't shock me at all. But kudos to their defense in this game. John Mateer, since the surgery, he's not looked himself, at least not looked like he did at the beginning of the year. So that doesn't help. You brought this up. We've talked about it a couple of times in the past. Oklahoma's got a rough stretch. It'll be interesting to see how that team performs down the stretch here.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway was the Ole Miss defense. When we think of Ole Miss, we think Lane Kiffin in the offense, and they're going to score a lot of points, and they're going to outscore everybody. I even had questions for Pete Golding and Lane Kiffin after their win against Washington State, where they were looking ahead to Georgia. But it's the Ole Miss defense that really stepped up. They got the safety. They held Oklahoma's ground game, which isn't great, but they really held them in check, except for that one long 65-yard run. And then in the fourth quarter, when they needed stops to not let Oklahoma back in the game, they got the stops where they didn't do it last week against Georgia. So for the Rebels defense, huge win for them, and they keep going, looking at a playoff bid, and they're still in the race for the SEC championship game. Vanderbilt 17, Missouri 10. I said I like the Ole Miss Oklahoma game because it was exciting and I like offense, but the first half of this game was utterly boring. Vanderbilt, Missouri were tied 3-3 at the half. The first three possessions for each team were punts before swapping field goals, and then a punt and end of the half. Just before the end of the third quarter, we finally got a touchdown with a one-play drive of an 80-yard run for Vanderbilt. Missouri came back and answered that drive mostly on the ground with their starting quarterback out. Vandy had a nice drive with 5 minutes to go to put the game away 17-10. Almost had the Hail Mary come through at the end, but I felt like this game, it was more watching bad offense than it was watching good defense. Neither of these teams looked like playoff teams. I know Vandy got the win. That'll put them in the mix for the playoffs for the moment, but I don't see either one of these teams capable of playing or winning a national championship. And Diego Pavia's Heisman talk, that should be over.
Dang. Yeah, I agree. It wasn't a great game to watch. Till the very end, the Hail Mary that caught right there on the goal line. Part of that is the Missouri quarterback getting hurt. Now you're playing with a true freshman quarterback on the road. He did take him down. He did drive him down for one score, but it wasn't a pretty game. I'm with you. Vanderbilt keeps winning. They got a dynamic quarterback that keeps them in games. They can't win it all, I agree, but they could beat anybody on a given day. But that wasn't an inspiring performance by either team.
Then we get to the nightcap, Texas A&M and LSU. I have to admit, I was surprised LSU had an 18-14 lead at the half due to an 11-point second quarter. That's not how I saw the game going. But then the second half was utter domination, and that's what I expected from Texas A&M. They scored 35 unanswered points before LSU added an garbage time touchdown at the end to make it 49-25. This was a statement for Texas A&M. They weren't looking past anyone. They weren't intimidated by Death Valley. They were playing a far inferior team that gets the benefit of the doubt because the name is LSU and what LSU has been in the past, not what they are currently, which is a mediocre football team. A&M held the LSU defense to 2 for 13 on third down and only 60 yards rushing. Texas A&M was balanced with 202 yards passing and 224 on the ground. Marcel Reed, he's in the Heisman conversation. Another stellar outing, 200 yards passing, 100 yards on the ground. Needs to clean up the turnovers. He had 2 picks. KC Concepcion, receiving touchdown, punt return for a touchdown. AV, yeah, I know you were thinking something crazy was going to happen in Death Valley. This was A&M domination.
No doubt. And when we talked about this game last week, I said that I think A&M's a top 5 team in the country, maybe top 3, but weird things happen on road night games, especially in Death Valley. And that's how it played out the first half. A blocked punt, and they had the lead, and that's kind of what I was thinking. But man, Texas A&M showed how good they were in that second half, and it was impressive to watch. They may be my favorite team to watch. They have weapons all over the field, home run hitters, from running back to quarterback to wide receiver to punt returners, and they have the best defense in the country. And I don't mean based on star power or, like Texas in theory would have the best defense in the country. They actually play defense. They're a really impressive team. I would throw them right up there with anybody in the country, including Ohio State. That would be one hell of a game to watch, Ohio State versus Texas A&M right now. I think I would pick Texas A&M to win.
Howell is an absolute menace on the defensive line. Torian York's all over the place. They're solid top to bottom. LSU, they're now 5-3. They've lost to every team that they've played that's had a pulse. They do have a bye next week, and then they're going to have another loss in 2 weeks when they play Alabama. November 15th is going to be huge for LSU. Arkansas comes to Baton Rouge. I expect them to be 5-4, and if they drop that game and go 5-5, they were already chanting fire Kelly. I don't think anybody expects them to beat Alabama, but then if you lose to Arkansas, who's already fired their coach, and you fall to 5-5, it could be the door for Brian Kelly and that time at LSU that's been a bad match from the beginning. A&M's well on their way to Atlanta in the SEC championship game. Game balls, I've got Haynes King, quarterback, Georgia Tech, 25 of 31, very efficient, 304 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. And then he did it on the ground, as he always does. 12 carries, 91 yards rushing, 2 more touchdowns, a total of 5. When he's healthy and he's playing, Haynes King is as good a quarterback within his system as anybody in the country, and Georgia Tech can beat anybody as long as he's healthy. And then my other game ball, late in the second quarter, BYU was down 14 points, and Bear Brockmeyer got the Cougars in the end zone just before the half, and then outscored Iowa State 24-3 in the second half to win. Bear was 22 of 35 for 307 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, added 12 carries and 49 yards on the ground for another touchdown. Dual threat quarterbacks, you're getting game balls, Haynes King and Bear Brockmeyer. AV, you got a game ball to give out?
Yeah, of course I do. My game ball goes to Drew Mestamaker. He's the quarterback for the University of North Texas. That offense is humming. He went 37 for 49 for 608 yards against Charlotte. 608 yards, B. That's on 49 attempts, 37 completions. That's 16 yards per completion, 12 yards per attempt. That is insane over 49 attempts. So game ball goes out to him. And I'll throw a shout out to my guy, Cade Weegan, who is the returner for Iowa, who I predicted it should be the all-purpose All-American guy. He's got another punt return for a touchdown this week. He keeps showing up and showing out.
Now we get to I've got questions. And, when I looked at the games this weekend, again, kind of said it was a ho-hum weekend. I think the teams that we thought were going to win, they did win, so I don't have a whole lot of questions. I thought about questioning Brian Kelly, but I feel like we've done that a bunch already. And then I was looking at Virginia and Tony Elliott, and you're having a really nice season. You're 7-1. You're undefeated in the ACC. But 3 of your last 4 games have gone to overtime. The other was a 2-point win over Washington State. Versus Florida State, you let them score with 36 seconds to go in the game to send it to overtime. Versus Louisville, you had a 10-point lead in the game going into the fourth quarter and let it go, push it to overtime. Versus UNC, you didn't score at all in the second half. Nobody did, and sent that game to overtime. Tony, you've been part of 2 national championship teams. You should know what that killer instinct is and how to put teams away. You're in year 4 at Virginia. I think you should have maybe imparted that a little bit to your program already. Maybe you don't have the alphas on the team. Maybe this is just part of your team learning how to win because they haven't had this kind of success. But if you keep doing this in these close games, it's going to come up and bite you. They've got a couple of games the rest of the way, a trip to Cal, followed by Wake, Duke, and Virginia Tech. That's what you've got left. You can win every one of those games. You could also lose every one or any of those games if you keep playing like you have the last 4 weeks. So, Tony Elliott, I've got some questions. How are you going to finish the season? You got to put teams away when you have a chance.
So I have a very similar I got question. So I have questions. I have questions for Jeff Lebby. Now, B, you may say that's unfair. Jeff Lebby's done a pretty good job at Mississippi State. He's gotten them punching above their weight class a little bit and keeping them in games. And that's true. And I like Jeff Lebby. And these aren't questions so much as we've had in the past where guys are on the hot seat or really failing. But the last 2 weeks, he's had leads that he should have won games with. You look at the Florida game and, he has a timeout left. He calls it kind of at an awkward time with like 20-something seconds left. They're in field goal range, but not super close. So he wants to get closer, but you've used your last timeout, so you have to throw the ball, which then brings in the possibility of a sack or an interception, which happened, and you lose the game. Just kind of fumbled that whole situation. This week, you're beating Texas at home. It's going to be a statement win, a trademark win for the program and for yourself. And Texas scores 24 points in the fourth quarter to tie it and then wins it in overtime. So in the fourth quarter and one drive, they score 31 points, Brien, to win by 7. Jeff Lebby having a lead going in the fourth quarter is like you having a lottery ticket and using it as a napkin. All right. There's no strategy, all confusion. Defense is gasping for air. Offense is stalling like a 97 Ford Taurus, and he's throwing bubble screens and losing the game. And this is why it matters. Jeff Lebby's name was starting to be thrown around in some of the coaching carousel, and it probably still will because he does have them competitive now, right? Although they've lost 16 straight conference games. But you win those 2 games, Jeff Lebby's writing his own check probably. He beats Florida and Texas in back-to-back weeks with Mississippi State. Mississippi State is paying him or someone else is paying him. Now you have a losing record and you fumbled away some wins. I'm sure he'll still get consideration and all that, but he went from one tier to the next, in my opinion. So Jeff Lebby, clean it up at the end of the game, man. I've got questions.
On Thursday, we're going to have All-American from Miami, Bryant McKinney, talking about the SMU and Miami game. You can follow Complete BS Pod on X and Instagram. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.